So we are here. We've arrived. So we are here. We've arrived, and
Tom Petty's daughter Adria was
we are
speaking
now
there
at
to the
our location here.
BBC's Martin Vennard. You're listening to
The
the BBC
building
World Service.
right
This is
behind us is
Weekend.
our
In
location.
a moment,
Okay.
I'm going to be introducing our guests who'll be here
So
for the course of the rest of the programme. Stay tuned if you can.
we are almost welcome. Let me flip the camera.
This is the BBC World Service, where Heart and Soul explores personal approaches to spirituality around the world.
Our goal is when people walked in, they immediately felt like they could just breathe and just be and connect to light, to peace, to calm, to healing, to whatever it is that they need when they come in.
And when I play, there's such a sense of devotion and humbling yourself before this higher power. And my father would say that this music is the fastest way to reach that divinity.
Some moments passed by. Paramedic came on scene. This lovely lady. She looked at me, looked at the car a number of times, and she said, "Listen, sir, if you don't believe in a higher power or God or whoever it is, start believing."
Heart and Soul. Listen Fridays at 18:30 GMT or search the documentary online or on the BBC World Service app.
The time is 6:30 GMT. This is Weekend on the World Service. Still to come, an introduction to our guests. We'll hear about a film that documents the destruction by fire of a whole community in Hawaii and the trouble with artificial intelligence, according to one of its most important pioneers. After the news.
So we are. Morning, sir. Yes, sir. So we are right here, and this is it.
The US government shutdown is entering its 40th day. Senators are due to meet in a rare Sunday session to try to end the
Seabeds right
impasse
up.
after efforts on Saturday failed.
The seabeds
Nearly a
right
million
up
people have been evacuated in the
Ravens.
Philippines as a new powerful typhoon approaches. From Wong
Hello,
has
my brother.
intensified
Welcome.
to
How
a
are you?
super typhoon.
Welcome to
The
this live.
Syrian President Ahmed Asharaz arrived in Washington for an official visit.
How are you doing? How is everything?
After the US, following the Brexit treaty,
Hope you are doing
also
fine.
recognizes global terrorism.
Hi.
Foreigners
Hello.
in this militant will meet President Trump at the
Welcome,
White
welcome
House.
to this live.
China has temporarily suspended a ban on approving exports of high-tech metals
I'm
to the
from
US,
Ghana. I'm from
which are
Ghana. And
crucial
you,
for
where are
both
you
the
from?
semiconductor industry and green
I'm from
technology.
Ghana. And you, where
Beijing
are you from?
imposed the
Please
restriction
state where are you
after
from?
citing their dual-use applications in both civilian and military technology. The president of the
I'm
COP30
from
climate
Ghana.
summit
And
in
you, where are
Brazil
you from?
has said it's
Let me know, please.
essential
State which
to
country are
keep
you from?
alive the goal of limiting temperature rise to 1.5 degrees above
Which
pre-industrial
country are you
levels.
from?
It comes ahead of the formal opening on Monday. Ukraine's Zaporizhia nuclear power plant has regained its access to backup electricity from the grid for the first time in 6 months after a second power line was
State the
repaired.
country you are
The
from.
plant lies in an active combat zone and has been relying on emergency diesel generators. More than 50 hikers have been airlifted out of a national park in New Zealand because of a massive wildfire. A researcher in Britain has discovered that US and Japanese soldiers engaged in a truce during the brutal Battle of
Tell me,
Okinawa
where are
in
you from? Which part of the
1945,
world are you
during
chatting
which the
from?
two
Are
sides
you watching
talked and
from?
picnicked together. The ceasefire lasted until the
Here
Japanese
is Ghana.
surrender
This is
2 months
Apelimpi
later.
Central Mosque. Okay.
You're listening to Weekend here on the BBC World
Today is
Service. My
Sunday,
name
the
is
9th of
Paul Henley. In the next 30
November
minutes, the new
2025.
documentary that tells the story of terrible fires 2 years ago in Hawaii. And he was one of the pioneers of artificial intelligence. Now he's one of the
Today is
most
Sunday, the
critical
9th of
voices,
November
warning of the
2025.
existential threat that AI could pose to humanity. We'll hear from him shortly. But it wouldn't be Weekend without two guests with me for the rest of the programme today. They are Laurie Gehring, who is a climate change journalist, and Tim Judah, journalist, author, special correspondent for The Economist, covering the Balkans and Ukraine. They're going to be giving us their personal takes on the news, issues, and talking points we'll address today. Let's get to know a little bit more about them. by way of introduction. You've said that you wanted to write about your travels, Laurie, except that travelling contributes to climate change, which puts a bit of a bar on things.
Well, one thing I'm figuring out is there's quite a lot of fun traveling you can do that's not so high emission. I just went up to Scotland with my brother and sister-in-law, and on the train we had a fantastic time. And I'm old enough now. I've got one of these old
So where are
people's
you watching
travel
from,
passes
please?
in London, and I think it would be
Which
really
part
fun
of the world
sometime
are
to
you
see how
watching
far
from?
you can go without paying a cent in the
Apparently
UK.
you can go the whole country, but it
Today,
just
of
takes
course,
an
today
awfully
is
long time
Sunday,
and a lot of stopping.
the
Exactly.
9th of
Local buses.
November
You've
2025.
had dinner with Castro, it says here. You've met Mandela. How come?
Oh, I was a foreign correspondent for the Chicago Tribune for many years, and lucky enough to be in a lot of interesting places around the world.
And you these days concentrates on what? Just explain.
I'm a climate change journalist. I've specialized in that for about 20 years now, and particularly over the last couple of years on threats from extreme heat, which we're seeing coming up everywhere around the world.
Tim, a journalist, author covering the Balkans and other regions, currently for The Economist. Tell me about your work first.
Well, actually, my very first jobs were were here at the BBC.
So which country are you watching from?
First jobs
Let's
after university, and then I went to live in Romania after the revolution, and never looked back. And I've covered places all over the world, but my concentration has remained kind of Eastern Europe, and then after the collapse of Yugoslavia, or during the collapse of Yugoslavia, the Balkans. And
you lived in Belgrade for a time, right?
I did. I lived in Belgrade, and then I came back here. But the last few years, it's really been a concentration on Ukraine, especially. I mean, I spent months and months of last year in Ukraine. I'm not living there, but I spent a lot of time there, covering both the front and what's happening behind the front, of course.
What's the classic route in and out of Ukraine at the moment? There's only train travel within the country, isn't it?
Well, train and car and bus. So yeah. Well, I mean, there are plenty of ways.
Like I said, today is
to get into Ukraine.
Today is Sunday, the 9th of
I flew
November
to Poland. I flew
2025.
to Warsaw. You take a train to
Sunday,
Helm, and
9th
then
of
there's a
November
train that went from
2025.
Helm all the way 1,000 kilometers to Kharkiv, which is in the east of the country. And from Hammersmith, where I live in London, to Kharkiv took me almost 2 days, so not very efficient. And if I'd been able to fly, it would have taken about 2.5 hours, but it took a lot longer than that. I mean, other ways to get in, an easy way to get in.
Today is Sunday,
to
9th of
Chisinau
November
in
2025.
Moldova, and then you can be in Odessa in 3 or 4 hours. So it's not very difficult, but it's just time-consuming.
How do you explain your particular Balkans interest / obsession?
Well, I wouldn't say it was an obsession, but it's just that when I went to Romania, from my jobs here in the BBC after the revolution, that was after the revolution in Romania. That was a really good story for a year, and then the wars in the former Yugoslavia broke out. I never intended to be a specialist in Balkan affairs, but it just then moved from Bucharest to Belgrade, and never looked back. So it was just fate, really.
Tim Judah and Laurie Gehring are our guests here on this edition of Weekend here on BBC World Service. Now, on August the 8th, 2023, a wildfire broke out in the town of Lahaina on the island of Maui in Hawaii. It was one of the deadliest fires in US history. At least 102 people died, 2,000 structures were destroyed, and while some of the neighborhoods are being rebuilt, the town itself remains today in ruins. Late last month, a new using footage mostly shot by residents had its premiere at the Hawaii International Film Festival. It's called Lahaina Rising. Here's a clip of it.
I'll never forget how dark it was.
A cloud of smoke so massive that it was blocking out the sun. I get a call. There's a fire.
We realized Lahaina was in serious trouble.
We all piled in that fire truck.
Like, okay, let's just start shooting everything. Until the water ran out.
We gotta get out. And you look out the window. Everything is gone.
Well, the director of Lahaina Rising is Matti Schweitzer.